Hi. Am I back? Is this me officially being back? Like, is this for real? It isn't. I just happen to be doing a video for my other channel, my other channel, the Bisexual Romance Author Vlog channel. And I was about to reference a study that when I saw it a couple of months ago, it was like, it blew my mind. And I thought, this is the reason why I created Bisexual Real Talk. And too bad I don't have that channel anymore. And I was about to just reference it on the other channel, but I was like, no, I gotta do more. I actually need to talk about this study because it is mind-blowing. And you guys have to hear this because it is important. And what study is that? It's a study done in Australia involving 2,600 bisexuals. And the results were kind of shocking. So here's the thing. In 2016, 2017, a group did a study involved 2,600 bisexuals in Australia and on their mental health. And they tried to deduce in the end why it was that bisexuals are unhappy and if they are unhappy. And the result is A, they are unhappy, and B, they might know why. So what did the study show? The study shows that 58% of bisexuals, 58% of people who identify as bisexual report having high or very high psychological distresses and having histories of anxiety, depression, and eating disorders. 58%. 58%. That is hugely high. And then on top of that, almost half of respondents disclosed self-harm or thoughts of suicide in just the last 2 years. Are you kidding me? That's almost half of the bisexual population in Australia have thought about suicide or have disclosed self-harm. That's crazy. And even more crazy than that is that 78% of all bisexuals who took this study have thought about suicide. 78%. And even more crazy than that. And this blew my mind. 28% of everyone who identifies bisexual on this study attempted suicide. Let me say that again. 28%, which is more than a quarter of all bisexuals who took this study, had attempted suicide. And you might be going, well, that's a crazy high number, but how does that compare? And that's a good question. Amongst the normal population, the average population, it's 3%. It's 3.3%. But yet, in the bisexual population, 28%. 8 times higher. Attempted. Not thought about. Attempted. Crazy. The reason why I started this channel was because a couple years ago, 4 years ago, whatever, I was listening to someone give a talk, Faith, a friend of mine, and she mentioned that in the United States that bisexuals think about and commit suicide at a rate 3 times higher than that of gay and lesbians and 8 times higher than straight people. And I did this channel and I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a channel so that it could bring down that suicide rate by putting something out there where people can look at it and go, you know what? I feel better about being bisexual and hence maybe bring down the suicide rate. But yet, here it is, 2016, 17, and yet it's still as high as it was. Now I'm hoping that today it might be slightly lower than that because a couple years have passed, but still, 8 times higher people have attempted suicide. So the great thing about this study, though, not only does it bring to light some crazy things, but the great thing about this study is they also have an idea of why, because they asked other health questions along with it. And then people have theorized as to why these numbers are so big. And they have 2 things that have stood out, which is kind of counter to what a lot of people thought, as to why the mental health outcomes, like 58% of bisexuals have high or very high levels of psychological distress, So there are 2 things. The first thing is basically the answer to this question. And you answer this question and, this will tell you something about yourself. Do you feel that your sexuality is bad or wrong? Do you feel that your sexuality is bad or wrong? And do you wish you could make your bisexuality go away? Those two questions will determine basically your health outcome. If you answer that you feel that your sexuality is bad or wrong, or if you answer that you wish your bisexuality would go away, you are more likely to have depression. You're more likely to have anxiety and have an eating disorder and to think about suicide and to attempt suicide. Crazy, right? And here's the other thing that they thought, they called that biphobia. I refer to biphobia as something different, but that's what they refer to as biphobia. So if you, according to them, have internalized biphobia, then you are more likely to have really bad health outcomes. And the second thing they suggested was that, this is interesting, if you are in a heterosexual relationship, and especially if that person that you're in a relationship with is not accepting of your bisexuality, that is the highest determinant of whether or not you have poor psychological distress. That is, whether or not you are in a heterosexual relationship. And they defined a heterosexual relationship as just being in a relationship with someone of a different gender than you. Basically, this study only looked at cisgendered people. So if you were, born male or born female, and you still identify as, or you were identified as that as birth, and you still identify that now, and you are in a relationship with someone of, in this case, the opposite gender, then you are in a heterosexual relationship. And that is the highest correlation is between being in a heterosexual relationship and psychological distress as a bisexual. Right? And they're not even saying that if the person is supportive, they're just saying that if you are in a heterosexual relationship, then the likelihood is a lot higher that you will have psychological distress. Now, I'm gonna push back on that just a tad bit. And I'm gonna say that it's more about having the accepting partner. Now, granted, they say, okay, I have always been pushing since the beginning of this channel that bisexuals should be in relationships with other bisexuals, because they are more likely to understand what you're going through. They are more likely to be supportive. So in this case, yes, maybe if you can find a straight partner who is extremely supportive of your bisexuality, then wonderful. But if you can't, find someone who's bisexual, because they're more likely to be supportive of you. They're not a guarantee, but they're more likely to. But in either case, if you are in a heterosexual relationship, you are. And the reason why they theorize this, and from the questions they asked, is because of the invisibility that comes whenever you are in a relationship with someone who's the opposite gender. Because everyone just assumes that you're straight if you are in a relationship with the opposite gender. And apparently, just being in that scenario where people look at you and go, oh, this person's straight, and then you have to constantly correct that, and you have to think about having to correct that, that causes you a lot of psychological distress. So just being in an opposite gendered relationship is one of the causes of you having a lot of stress. Now, if there was a way that you could be visibly bisexual all the time, that would probably diminish your psychological stress a lot. That'll probably diminish the psychological stress of bisexuals a lot. And funny thing, I did have that clothing company idea where people can brand themselves with clothing as being bisexual. Maybe I'll try that sometime in the future. But yes, that is what they found. Isn't that just crazy? And some of the learnings they got from it, and this is kind of also a little crazy, and this is something I didn't expect, but it mattered not at all whether or not you had friends and peers who were LGBTQIA. It didn't matter. The thing that mattered most was the partner that you were with. So even if your partner was not supportive of your bisexuality, you could have all the bisexual friends, not bisexual, LGBT friends in the world, and it wouldn't make a difference. That's surprising. Now, again, the people who were looking in this study looked at LGBT friends, not specifically bisexual friends. So if you are a bisexual and you have gay friends, that might not do much for you. But there's nothing that says nowhere in the study says that having specifically bisexual friends won't do a lot for you, because Lord knows when I started having bisexual friends, it made a huge difference. So I'm going to push back on that a little bit, simply because LGBT does not mean bisexual, and more likely you are, if you're in Australia, in some small town, more likely you're going to have gay friends than you are bisexual friends, even though those friends might actually be bisexual. The fact they're identifying as gay might be a difference. So, but that was an interesting thing. So if you are like a psychologist or something, or you're trying to help some bisexual, just pushing them to be a part of the LGBT community does not help. What helps is helping their internalized biphobia, and for them to have a partner that is supportive of their bisexuality. That is what helped. Now, granted, this is not a perfect study. I like to refer to the CDC study. That was a really, really well done study. This one is done. It's a good study. It's definitely a good study, but there were some flaws, and I just want to bring this up really quickly. It's possible that the people who were questioned, like, it's a biased sample group. It is possible that, okay, here's an interesting thing. There was a previous study done a couple of years ago that said that bisexuals don't exist. It said that bisexuals don't exist, and it was based on, I think I know the person who did this, at least I know I'm a friend of the person who did it. They like tied instruments to people's genitalia and then exposed them to like naked images of people of different genders. And the people in the study did not have a reaction to both genders. They only had a reaction to one gender. And then the study was repeated like a couple years later, and they found the opposite result. And they decided the reason why this is the case is because there's a difference between people who identify as bisexual, and there's a difference of people who are like have an attraction to both genders. The study assumed that the people who identify as bisexual, specifically male, have a higher likelihood to have an attraction towards the same gender. So it's like if you identify as bisexual, as a male, you are more likely to sexually be attracted to men. So that if you are in a heterosexual relationship in this case, and you are male identifying as bisexual, then you are not necessarily going to be happy with your relationship, because you in your heart would prefer to be having sex with a man. Now, that's one possible theory of what could happen, but honestly, I don't believe that so much, because bisexuals as a group, just human beings as a group, relationships in general aren't just about sex. Like there's a lot more, for a lot of people, sex kind of dies down and almost goes away over time. So there has to be something else. Like you can't just constantly be wanting to have sex with someone else. I mean, I'm sure if a heterosexual person constantly wants, like after a certain point, constantly wants to have sex with someone else too, but they're not feeling the same distresses. No, so I have to assume that it has more to do with how supportive the relationship is than whether or not, the people who were answered to the study are more likely to, because they're male, be bisexual, more attracted to men. So I'm going to push back on that, but it's something that was interesting and I wanted to bring up. And also, there's also a possibility that people who have biphobia, like people who hate themselves for being bisexual, like actual biphobia, might be more likely to choose partners that have a disliking for bisexuals as well. And because these people hate themselves as being bisexual and think that they're getting what they deserve, sort of thing, they're less likely to get out of relationships that are unhealthy. Now that I can kind of agree with. There's probably some of that going on too. But this is the study, and I had to talk about it. So ask yourself this, how do you feel? Do you feel that your bisexuality is bad or wrong? And do you wish your bisexuality to go away? If you say those two things, man, you really, really need to distress that. Because if you also have anxiety, if you also have depression, if you also have eating disorders and stuff like that, that could be very much at the heart of the reason why. If you have suicidal thoughts, if you've attempted it, that could be very clearly why. And if you are in a relationship, and I know a lot of you are, a heterosexual relationship, and on top of it being a heterosexual relationship, your partner isn't completely supportive of you being a bisexual, man, you have serious problems. So if those two things apply to you, do whatever you can to fix it, because those things are bad for your mental health. And that could be the reason why bisexuals have the problems that they do. How interesting is that? So I'm on my next channel now. I'm going to go and do a video about how this affected me. I'm going to reference it. And I figured out how the two channels will differ now. This channel will be about when I talk about general bisexual stuff, like learnings, like how-to type stuff, and like studies type stuff, like stuff that general bisexual would be interested in. And my other channel will be talking about my personal experiences as a bisexual and my personal experiences as an author. So now I'm going to go and do the other video about my personal experiences as a bisexual and a recent experience I had, like looking for other bisexuals, and I'll do it over there. And oh, if you like the channel, please like the video and subscribe. Liking video apparently does a lot of help. So if you would like to like it, then that would help me a great deal. Also, if you want to check out my t-shirts on Amazon, this is still one of the best-selling bisexual t-shirts on Amazon. It's amazing. And also I have my bisexual lapel pins, and I have my bisexual romance books, including my new book called Aladdin's Jasmine. Please check those out. And until the next video, stay cooler, my bisexual friends. Stay cooler. Bye.